When I first found out about Wicked many years ago and found out the whole plot and concept of the musical, I was like, oh no, that sounds like something I absolutely will not enjoy. But now, having seen both parts of the film adaptation, has my mind changed? Let's talk about it. What's up guys, my name is Ryan, welcome to my channel if you are new here. So this is of course going to be my review for Wicked for Good. I had intended to do a review for the first Wicked, but one, I got kind of busy, I just didn't have time, and I also have been kind of sick recently. And two, I thought my thoughts on the second film and the first film were going to be generally the same, and they kind of are, and we'll get into that. But that's why I didn't do a review for the first part. But before we jump in, I want to give kind of my pre-thoughts and what I was thinking going into this film. So as I just said, when I first found out about Wicked and the whole plot and concept, I heard that it changed a lot of the Wizard of Oz lore, and so I looked up, I rarely do this, but because I heard there were so many changes, I looked up the whole plot of the stage musical online, and I was like, oh, no, you do not do that to the Wizard of Oz story. The only thing I've seen or heard from Wicked are some of the songs. My cousins, who I found out about it from, they are big Wicked fans, and whenever we do karaoke, whenever I'm around them, they always play and sing the songs. But I was not really excited or interested when they announced a film adaptation of the musical. I went and saw the first one, and I was actually thoroughly surprised, and I actually pretty decently enjoyed it. I didn't love it. It's not one of my favorite musicals now or anything. I just enjoyed it a bit more than I thought I would. So I was hoping I would enjoy the second part as well. So what did I think of Wicked Part 2 or Wicked for Good? I was kind of disappointed by this one. I felt like it was much weaker than the first part. And from what I've heard from people who have seen the actual stage production, they have said that the second act is much weaker than the first act, and that's kind of generally how I felt about this second Wicked movie, which of course is adapting the second act of the stage production. I just felt like this was a big step down from the first one, but there are some things I did enjoy about the film, so I'm going to talk about my pros first. First off, like with the first one, the production here is fantastic. There are so many beautiful sequences, and it's such a colorful, very pretty to look at movie. There's a lot of really great visually pleasing visuals. There's so many beautiful shots in this film. All the actors are really good, especially Jonathan Bailey as Fiyero, and of course our leads, Ariana Grande as Glinda, and Cynthia Erivo as Elphaba, or the Wicked Witch of the West. They are such great actresses and singers. Their voices blend so well together. I love when those two sing together, and I think they give pretty good performances here in this film like they did in the first one. And of course, minor spoilers if you don't know anything about Wicked, but the second act, which this film is adapting, does intertwine the classic Wizard of Oz story. There's so much setup and little references and teases to that story, and when they say certain things and do certain things that I'm like, oh, I know what you're setting up there, I know what you're referencing. There's a lot of really cool and interesting references like that in both this film and in the previous one, so I really enjoyed that. But I think that pretty much does it for my pros. This is a film that I unfortunately have more cons than pros for, so I'm gonna jump into my cons now. Like I said previously, this feels like a much weaker, big step down from the first one. I felt the first one was a lot of fun, and it was actually really interesting to see Elphaba and Glinda go to school together and start off as enemies and then become friends and kind of learn from each other. A lot of the musical numbers were really fun. Kind of gave some High School Musical vibes because it is a musical set at a school and there's a lot of drama between the characters. You know, come the end of the first one, we find out when Elphaba and Glinda go to see the Wizard of Oz, we find out he's not a good guy and he's lying to the people of Oz, and he has this plan to kind of capture all the animals and take away their ability to speak. He's not the greatest guy, and Elphaba decides to kind of try and expose the wizard and reveal the truth to the people of Oz, and there's kind of elements of propaganda and a bit political feeling things towards the end of the film, and since we're not at shiz in this film, the main plot of the film revolves around Elphaba trying to expose the wizard and tell Oz the truth, and so we're just left with kind of a bit political feeling, propaganda, trying to bring down corrupt government type stuff, which just isn't as fun. The plot of this film, or this act of the musical, is not as fun and interesting as the plot of the first act or the first film. I also felt like there were a lot of moments in this film that were really rushed and a bit messy. For example, the Wizard of Oz story with Dorothy takes place in this film, and as I said before, they're all these references and set up for that story and so it can take place. I love those references, as I said, but it feels like in this film, they're trying to set up and get all the elements and important characters from that story, especially like Dorothy's three friends, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion. They're trying to set up those characters and get everything ready for Dorothy to arrive. It feels like we're rushing to get there, and it feels like sometimes things happen in this film simply just to set up the story, not because they're genuinely happening or what would really authentically happen. It's just happening so we can have that important element of the Wizard of Oz story in there when Dorothy gets to Oz. And when it comes to having the Wizard of Oz story in here, it felt like it doesn't really quite fit in this story. It felt like they're forcing certain pieces to fit that didn't fit. It feels like they just kind of squished the original classic story into this film, and it didn't really feel necessary or like it added anything to the plot. We don't even really see Dorothy's face, or she doesn't really have any lines or anything. And because it feels really rushed at times, I feel like it was really emotionally lacking at points. Like, it didn't take the proper time to slow down and let us take it in and feel how the characters were feeling. I know, like, some people who were sitting next to me, like, when the song For Good, that sequence happened, like, I know a lot of people were getting really emotional and crying, and I just was missing something. Like, I was trying to drum up the emotion, trying to feel how I was supposed to feel in the scene. I knew how I was supposed to feel, but I just felt like it did lack the proper build-up, and it was just so rushed and messy, and it didn't have the proper setup. I just didn't feel the emotion I was supposed to feel sometimes with this movie. And also, along with just the story of this act being weaker, I felt like a lot of the songs were a lot weaker as well. With the first act, not every song was playlist worthy. I didn't put every song on my playlist from the first film, but I still really enjoyed every song in the context of the story. But here, there's only like one song that I actually really liked and might add to my playlist, which of course is the one where the film gets its title from, For Good, that one between Elphaba and Glinda. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo, their voices just blend and sound so beautiful together. But every other song in this film, I just didn't feel anything. I didn't really care for them. There's no song that really made me bob my head and I really got into and gave me goosebumps and it was really pleasing to my ear, except maybe the beginning of the song No Good Deed. When Elphaba is saying that spell, that part was really pleasing to the ear and I was like, oh, finally a really good catchy song. But she sings the rest of the song and I'm like, oof, kind of bored. And that's not good for a musical. It's a musical, one of, if not the biggest thing, you have to have great music. And this film, I didn't think had great music. The whole time, I'm waiting for the next song to play, and I'm like, oh, I hope it's a good one, I hope it's a good one. And the only really good one I got was For Good at the end. But I think when it comes to Wicked, my biggest problem isn't necessarily with the film adaptations, but just the concept and the idea and the plot of this story itself. And that is that I'm just really not usually a fan of ideas and stories like this, where it takes like a classic, simple story and tries to expand upon it and build this rich history and give it this deep past behind all the characters and changing up the story and making, you know, the good guys the bad guys and the bad guys good guys. Kind of reminds me of the show Once Upon a Time. Like, I really enjoyed the first season of that show and I kept up with it for a few seasons, but I just got so sick and tired of them changing all my classic Disney fairy tale stories that I'm just like, I can't watch this anymore. I can't watch this. And I am such a big fan of the classic original 1939 Wizard of Oz movie with Judy Garland. I love that film so much. It's one of my favorite movie musicals. It's a very comforting film for me, and I imagine it is for a lot of people out there. It is so iconic. We quote it and reference it all the time in popular culture. It's like the definitive film that everyone needs to watch and grow up with, and it's such a simple, wholesome story where right and wrong and good and evil is so clear. It's so easy to understand, and Wicked, I feel, just unnecessarily expands upon it and makes it so much deeper and more complex, and I just really do not like that. It really bugs me to a certain degree. A really good friend of mine put it really well. He said Wicked, in and of itself, is very fun if it was its own original story, not based upon The Wizard of Oz. If this was the first Oz story, it's pretty dang good. But when you try and squish it into The Wizard of Oz and try to make it all fit, it's terrible and it doesn't work. And one of the reasons I wasn't very excited going into the first Wicked is because, like I said, they change up so much classic Wizard of Oz mythology. And spoilers if you haven't seen Wicked before, skip ahead like 20-30 seconds if you don't want to get spoiled. But having a romantic relationship between the Scarecrow and the Wicked Witch of the West, like on paper, you say that to someone who, like, pretend Wicked doesn't exist, like, you say that to someone. What if we made the Scarecrow and the Wicked Witch have a romantic relationship? You would be like, you're insane. In my opinion, that just, you never do that. I'm just not a fan of taking these classic, wholesome, simple tales and just making them so much more complex and changing them around. And I think Wicked is probably the prime example of a lot of my problems with Hollywood and just making new stories nowadays. And it's just like, have we really run out of original ideas that we have to take something like a perfectly fine one-off story in film and just expand upon it and add stories to that and expand this world? Like, I feel like every other day they announce like some spin-off or remake or reinterpretation, and just like they keep expanding these already established worlds that are perfectly fine with just like the one project they have, and they start making so many more, and it just gets so dragged out. I'm just like, can we have an original idea, please? A new, good, original idea? Do we really need to reinterpret and expand on something that's so perfect on its own? I know you can make the argument, you know, Wicked is a reinterpretation. It's not trying to exactly fit the Wizard of Oz story. You can make the argument that, you know, this is a completely different universe. It's similar, but it's different. You can use the multiverse excuse, but I'm just so tired of reinterpreting stories and using that multiverse excuse. I'm just so tired of the multiverse stuff and doing like other universe stories, you know what I mean? And I also really don't like how Hollywood makes a decent amount of films trying to make you sympathetic towards a villain, reinterpreting them as this misunderstood good guy, and they were actually the good guy the whole time. A lot of the time, when it comes to storytelling, a villain is just a villain. They're a bad person. And I'm not saying they don't have some understandable motivation and they don't have some emotional backstory, but it doesn't excuse what they do. It doesn't make what they do right. And I feel like it's stories like Wicked, where it's taking this bad guy and reinterpreting them and making them sympathetic. It's kind of training our brains to be more sympathetic towards like criminals, like murderers, and trying to make us think, oh, they're not that bad. And it's like, no, they're a terrible person and they need to pay for what they did. They need to be sent to prison. And I'm not saying we don't show them kindness or show them love and try to help them change. God says in 2 Peter 3:9, it is not his will that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. But forgiveness and changing who you are as a person does not excuse you from the consequences of your actions. You still need to pay for them and learn your lesson. I also think that this film just has some really messy, complex, confusing morality. My friend Luke, who you've seen in previous videos if you're a regular watcher of my channel, he went and saw the movie earlier this afternoon with me and my sister, and coming out of it, one of the first things he said was it just me, or was the morality of this film really messy and kind of confusing? And I'm like, no, I felt that too. This film was just kind of all over the place, I thought. Elphaba, throughout most of the film, is trying to expose the wizard and fight for and stand on the truth, which is a really good message, but then, minor spoilers again real quick, skip ahead, and then eventually Glinda comes to her side and sees how terrible a person the wizard is, but then Elphaba decides to be the Wicked Witch everyone thinks she is. She's decided to just give in and stop fighting for the truth. I'm just like, that's not a good message. And she decides that she needs to just fake her death, go off with Fiyero to the land beyond Oz. And at the end, I was just like, wait, what happens to them? Are they gonna be okay? I really did like how the wizard finds out that Elphaba is his biological daughter, and he sees what his lies have done, and he decides to leave Oz, and we get Glinda becoming the new kind of leader and Queen of Oz. And I like how we get a much better leader of Oz in the end of the film, and how she's learned from Elphaba to be a better person and to stand on truth, but then she doesn't share with Oz the truth that Elphaba was in the right the whole time, and she just kind of lets the lie live on, and I think that's a really bad message. So I just thought the messaging and the morality of this film was just so confusing at times and really morally complex, ambiguous, and reprehensible. And whenever I watch Wicked, I'm just like, this is so not what was going on in the original film. This was not the backstory of all these characters. So in my opinion, Wicked for Good was just a really, unfortunately, disappointing film. But I think that's all I have to say about Wicked for Good. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and let me know down below in the comments what you thought of Wicked for Good, as well as the first Wicked. I would love to know y'all's thoughts, even if they are vastly different from mine. I would love to have a conversation with y'all in the comments below, and click right here to subscribe if you enjoy my content. Right here is mine and my friend's previous review for Now You See Me, Now You Don't. So love and appreciate you checking out that video. And this is a playlist of all the films we've reviewed this year if you want to check out some of my other movie reviews. And with that, I hope you all have a blessed morning, afternoon, evening, night, whatever time it is when you're watching this video, guys, and I'll see y'all in the next one.